Welcome to Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. You can find us at LCARA.net, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram.
Hey, welcome to LCARA on the road. KY4BDP Brian here,
Chris, KY4CKP here.
and we are doing a vlog this week. Hotels on the air. It's not really on the ham radio side, but we thought we'd get together since he and I are both on the road, cover about 4 topics this evening, have a little fun with the vlog. We hope to do this periodically. It won't be on a schedule, something that'll come out probably in the middle of the week, but we thought we'd have a little bit of fun with this. And I've got Chris on my laptop on a video conference. He's got me on the other side. I've got one camera pointed at me. He's got 8 cameras pointed at him. But we'll go ahead and get started this evening. And Chris, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Like Brian says, we're on the road this week, and I'm in Virginia, and he's up in New Jersey. And we're going to try to play some radio this week, but we also just wanted to try this out and try doing some video conferencing and some recording and put some things together and cover a few topics.
Absolutely. So great to get with everybody today. Thanks for joining in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Go to our Facebook page, Instagram. All of that's down in the description below. Make sure you click on that bell to be notified every time we come out with a new video. And let's go ahead and jump into these topics. Chris, why don't you start us off? We're kind of new to the hobby ourselves, and sure, we're kind of jumping in knee deep, but what are some ways that you think people could get started in ham radio inexpensively?
Well, I think this is going to be a very timely topic. I think it always is. In fact, it's pretty apropos, because in my class this week I have a lady, and she's interested in ham radio. And in fact, I'm going to take my mobile rig in tomorrow and just kind of show it to her. But like a lot of folks, she's not really sure where to get started. And like a lot of folks, the amount of money for any adult hobby can be daunting. But with ham radio, it doesn't have to be that expensive. So the normal place that a lot of people recommend that you start, and that I would recommend that you start, is probably with what's known as a handy talkie. It's a portable radio, it looks like a walkie-talkie. But when you get your ham license, you can start by listening, even if you don't have your license, while you're studying. But it's a pretty inexpensive way to get online. You can get any number of brands, lower quality to higher quality, and $30 to $300 or more. But there's a lot of variations there, and it's a way to get into the hobby. And like I say, if you're still studying, you can still get in and start listening, seeing how the chatter goes, seeing what's available in your area, and then once you've got your license, you can start talking, and it can be pretty inexpensive.
I think that's a great piece of advice. I know when we got started, or at least when I got started, just having an HT and joining in on the local nets was a great way to kind of get started inexpensively. And you can go online and find, radios for $30 to $60 and just need a fairly inexpensive antenna. Maybe you could use a slightly nicer whip antenna on your HT, but worst case, get a ladder line or twin lead antenna and put it up someplace just outside, maybe where you can maybe hit your repeater, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And whether you're talking a handy talkie or a base unit later on, the antenna is like the speakers of a stereo. You can make any stereo sound better with better speakers. You're going to make your HF radio or your UHF VHF radio better with a better antenna. So that's probably the first upgrade most people would recommend. It's probably what I would recommend. Get a better antenna, and they're not that expensive. Handy talkies, $20 or $30 more, but you'll have a much better antenna, and you'll be a lot happier with that, even that inexpensive radio.
That's exactly right. I know when I first put up my ladder line, but before I had that, I was literally just using the HT's antenna, and then I got a slightly better whip antenna. I think it was a diamond, and I was able to participate, but everybody could tell my end was scratchy. And as soon as I put up that ladder line or that twin lead antenna, it was like night and day. Everybody was able to hear me just fine, and I was only pushing out maybe 5-6 watts, and I think maybe 8 watts on that one Bofang, but no problem for people hearing me on my side. And then over time, as you kind of get into the hobby a little bit, you're talking to your Elmers, people who've been in this hobby for a long time. They'll either steer you towards equipment that's fairly inexpensive. They may have equipment themselves that they're willing to sell. A lot of ham radio operators started simple and work their way up. And they still have some of those simple pieces of gear that they'd be willing to let go at a fairly inexpensive price. And so you can start building up your inventory of radios as time goes by. But start with that HT at the bare minimum and start participating on those nets.
That's right. You can get a handy talkie, you can get on some nets, and once you meet a few folks, and it's pretty easy to do, again, you can probably find some inexpensive equipment. It does tend to come up for sale, and people have older units. And depending on your personality, it doesn't have to always be new equipment. There's great used equipment out there to help you get into any new hobby and not spend a lot of money. Some of the new stuff's not that expensive either, but whatever you're most comfortable with in your budget. But yeah, handy talkie is a great way to get started, and even before your license, while you're studying, you can start listening. Right, it never hurts to listen. You can kind of hear how it's done, how the chatter goes, and then you'll be ready to go once you pass that first test.
And that's another great piece of advice, listening to what's currently out there. Even if you don't have your technician's license, nothing prevents you from listening. You can listen to the etiquette, and you can listen to people putting out their call signs, recognizing other call signs that they wish to speak to, so that when you do begin to communicate after you take your first exam and pass and get your first technician's ticket, then you'll be a little bit more comfortable in putting out your call sign and participating on those nets. Chris and I participate on 2 nets as often as possible with our local club. We have a 2-meter net on Sunday and Tuesday, and that allows us to continue to practice our etiquette, but also to stay in touch with our club members even when we're on the road. We'll be talking about some other product and/or software that you can get so that you can participate when you're not as close to the repeater as to be able to participate directly. But at the bare minimum, let's start participating with those nets. And so let's kind of delve into the next topic, Chris, and that is, what are some activities that, once you get that HT and you start finding out what local club is near you and you find out when those local nets are, what are some activities that users can begin right now with the equipment that they have and to begin to enjoy the hobby?
Well, there's all kinds of network activities that take place. There's weather nets, there's emergency communications nets, there's just talking. A lot of people call it rag chewing. So there's a lot of activities you can get into, and one of the things you could potentially do is known as fox hunting. There's games you can start playing. So there's a lot of things you could get into with your handy talkie to meet folks, to see what's going on. But weather and some of the other emergency nets, those are running all the time. Any day of the week, there's a net somewhere. So depending on the population density where you live, you should be able to find some activity and find some things happening and be able to start participating and listening to what's going on. Once you have your license, then you can, of course, start to communicate. So, yeah, there's a lot you can do. And as we'll get into a little bit later, joining a club is one of the biggest things you can do, because you can actually get face-to-face with folks, local hams in your area, and also see what they're saying, what's going on. And check the club website and see what activities are out there.
Right. I know one of the first things Chris and I did is we hit our local club's website. They post their nets right there on the website so that you know exactly when they're going to be. You know what frequencies they're going to use. They'll give you also your tones and things like that, so you hopefully can begin to set up your radio correctly. And then there's a number of videos online, not by us but others, that will show you how to set up your radio for those initial programming options for your local repeater, or repeaters if you, like Chris does, you live in a metropolitan area where there may actually be more than one.
Yeah, it doesn't always take that much of an antenna to reach out. With the ladder line type antennas that you can put up, if you have maybe a 2-story house, but even maybe not, you can maybe reach 15 to 30 miles. And you might be surprised how many repeaters and how much activity is available in that range. Normal straight handy talkie to handy talkie, you're talking about 3 miles, but you may still have some things that are out there. So check out your areas, do some searches on the internet, find out the clubs that are there, see what activities they have, see what equipment is available, what kind of repeaters are there, and to start listening and start participating. You can join almost any club even if you don't have your license yet. They are not worried about that. In fact, you can usually get some help to help make sure you can pass your test. Exactly
right. Let's pause here, Chris, and let's reset the cameras, and we'll continue this conversation and move forward.